Viewer discretion is advised. This series covers real events involving violence, crime and strong language that some viewers may find distressing. The content is intended for mature audiences. Please proceed with caution. Welcome back to London's Dark Archives. In this episode, we'll go beyond the legends of the Krays to the brutal realities of those whose loyalty to the twins become their undoing. Lesley Payne, the firm straight man, Jack The Hat McVitie, and Frank the Mad Axeman Mitchell. These were all men who started as trusted allies of the twins, only to become victims in their unrelenting rise to power. Lesley Payne, a name often overshadowed by more notorious figures of the Kray story. But while he lacked the violent flair of the twins, or the streetwise cunning of their associates, Payne played a pivotal role in the Krays empire, at least until things started to unravel. Unlike many of the Krays associates, Lesley Payne weren't a typical East End hard man. Born in 1930, Payne was educated, well-spoken, and operated more in the world of white-collar crime than the back-alley brawls that the Krays were known for. He acted as the twins' unofficial accountant and business manager, helping to launder their earnings and broker deals that would give the Krays empire a legitimate front. With his connections to banks, lawyers and other business types, Payne gave the Krays access to a world they couldn't easily navigate themselves. He was instrumental in setting up the Krays businesses. He formalised their operations and helped them invest in nightclubs, gambling dens and properties, crafting an image of respectability the twins could show off. In many ways, Payne represented the legitimacy that the Krays craved, and he was smart enough to keep his hands clean. Despite the benefits of their partnership, Lesley Payne began to see the darker side of the twins' ambitions. While Payne was trying to lead them towards a more legitimate empire, Ronnie and Reggie's violent and erratic behaviour was making that nearly impossible. Payne openly disapproved of the Krays' more brutal methods, particularly Ronnie's escalating violence and erratic decisions. But it weren't just the difference in vision that put Payne in danger, it was his loyalty, or rather his lack of it. It's believed that Payne, perhaps unwisely, began making offhand remarks about the Krays' volatility and his frustrations. To make matters worse, Payne's own actions began to hint that he weren't entirely loyal. He knew things about the Krays that made him dangerous, and they began to suspect that he might cooperate with the police if it suited him. For men like the Krays, who valued loyalty above all, this was their ultimate betrayal. By 1966, Ronnie's suspicions had boiled over, and he'd convinced Reggie that Payne needed to be dealt with. They didn't want a business partner they couldn't trust, especially not one with as much information as Payne had. So they turned to a familiar face, Jack McVitie, their one-time enforcer, and ordered him to kill Lesley Payne. However, in a twist of events, Jack McVitie ultimately failed to carry out the hit on Lesley Payne. It's said that Jack bungled the job, either out of hesitation or just sheer incompetence. Letting Payne slip through his fingers, Payne managed to stay out of harm's way for a time, and the failure would only fuel the animosity between McVitie and the twins, setting the stage for McVitie's own grisly end. Despite escaping McVitie's clumsy attempt, Payne knew his days was numbered. He'd crossed the Krays, and that was a deadly gamble. Eventually, Payne did provide the authorities with information, turning from a trusted insider to a dangerous liability. Lesley Payne's story highlights the complex layers within the Krays empire. A man who could have been their gateway to legitimacy instead became another victim of their ruthless approach to business. In their world, trust was fleeting and loyalty came at a high price, one that Lesley Payne narrowly avoided paying with his life, though his reputation was irreparably damaged. Born in 1932 in the rough streets of Oxton, Jack McVitie was no stranger to violence. A career criminal, Jack became known for his short temper and the distinctive trilby hat he always wore. which earned him the nickname Jack The Hat. In his prime, Jack was a known enforcer in the East End, a feared figure who did whatever he was paid to do. Despite his reputation, Jack's reliability became questionable as he drifted into heavy drinking. His bouts of drunken violence made him notorious not only for his brutality but also for his lack of discipline, qualities that would ultimately put him on the wrong side of the Krays. Jack's relationship with the Krays was both his ticket to fortune and his curse. They used him to intimidate rivals and handle messy jobs that required someone without scruples. But his loyalty waned, and after a series of botched jobs, including a failed hit on Lesley Payne, the twins' business associate, he had become a liability. Ronnie and Reggie were furious. The Krays were known to operate with ruthlessness and precision, and they couldn't afford to have a loose cannon like Jack on board. He was once a valuable asset. Now, he'd embarrassed them. Ronnie decided it was time for Jack to pay the ultimate price. On a quiet October evening, Jack was lured to a party at 97 Everingham Road. This was no swanky club or exclusive bar, but a modest flat, a perfect place to keep things under wraps. The promise of women and drinks was all it took to bring Jack to the party, but the invite was a trap, with Reggie and Ronnie planning to end his life that night. The flat was crowded with familiar faces, all associates of the Krays who knew better than to ask questions. There was a few close members of the firm, including the Lambrianou brothers, as well as other loyal Kray associates, who would later act as silent witnesses to what unfolded. As the evening wore on, Jack was drinking heavily. He was in his usual mood, loud, unpredictable, and unaware of what was to come. Meanwhile, Ronnie was seething. He sat quietly, giving Reggie a look that made their intentions clear. Reggie had intentionally planned to shoot Jack, reportedly planning to use a silenced .38 pistol. But the gun jammed, and as tempers flared, Reggie reached for a knife instead, adding a terrifying personal element to the attack. Jack realised too late what was happening. A fight broke out, with Jack struggling to escape. Witnesses recalled Reggie lunging at him, shouting, cursing. The room quickly turned into a scene of chaos as Reggie plunged the knife repeatedly into Jack, stabbing him over and over. Blood splattered walls, leaving everyone in shock, but no one dared intervene. The aftermath was brutal. The body lay lifeless in the flat, and the shock of what had happened began to sink in for those present. Freddie Foreman, known for his unflinching loyalty and role as the Krays' undertaker, was immediately ordered to handle the clean-up. Witness accounts from the likes of Tony Lambrianou describe a chilling atmosphere. No one spoke of the murder openly, but it was clear they were all to remain silent. Lambrianou and others helped dispose of Jack's body, loading it into a car to be discarded, with Foreman overseeing the entire operation. He was well practised at hiding evidence and knew exactly how to handle things to minimise police suspicion. The body was never recovered, as it was likely disposed of in the English Channel. In later interviews, several members of the firm who was there at the party recounted their version of events. Freddie Foreman, who would eventually confess to his role in the disposal, called it business, a chilling reminder of how ingrained these practices were among the Kray associates. Jack McVitie's murder sent shockwaves through London's underworld. Many who attended that night claimed to be haunted by it for years. This murder marked a shift in the Krays' operation, where even close associates weren't safe if they crossed the twins. The message was clear. Loyalty was a one-way street with the Krays. Frank Mitchell's story was as dramatic as it was tragic. Known as the Mad Axeman, he had a violent temper and a powerful build. Mitchell's life was a series of incarcerations interrupted by brief stints of freedom where his criminal reputation only grew. Born in 1929 in Canning Town, Frank was a product of his environment. By the age of 9 he was already known by the police. His violent tendencies and massive physique meant he was both feared and revered in equal measure. His erratic behaviour and violent outbursts led to him being labelled mentally unfit, and he spent much of his adult life in secure psychiatric hospitals and prisons, including Broadmoor and later Dartmoor, where he earned his infamous nickname. In prison, Mitchell caught the attention of Ronnie Kray, who was drawn to Frank's intimidating reputation. Ronnie saw an opportunity to demonstrate the Krays' power by breaking Frank out of prison, reinforcing their image as untouchable figures capable of outsmarting the law. In December 1966, with the help of Albert Donahue and another associate, the Krays arranged Frank's escape. On a misty morning, as Frank worked on the moor, a getaway car was waiting, driven by associates loyal to the twins. The plan was simple but effective. They whisked him away, and Frank became a fugitive, hidden in an East London flat. Mitchell's time in hiding was far from smooth. Kept in a flat in East Ham, he was guarded by members of the crew. At first, Frank was content, flattered by the attention and promises made by the twins, but he soon grew restless. His violent tendencies resurfaced, and he began making demands to see his parents, to go out, and eventually to be treated as a free man. The strain of controlling Mitchell became too much. Albert Donahue later described the constant vigilance required to keep Frank from losing his temper, making it clear the Krays had underestimated just how unstable he was. Interviews from Albert reveal a tense atmosphere in the flat, with Frank threatening violence if he weren't allowed to leave. As Frank's behaviour spiralled out of control, the Krays realised they couldn't keep him hidden. Ronnie reportedly called Freddie Foreman, their trusted enforcer, to deal with the Mitchell problem. Freddie, known for his unwavering loyalty and discretion, was the perfect man for the job. On the evening of December 24th, Mitchell was lured out of the flat under the guise that he'd be taken to a safe house. Freddie Foreman and two other men led him to a waiting van. That's where Frank was ambushed and shot. Albert Donahue gave a chilling account of the night. He weren't aware that Frank would be shot in the van, and he was scared for his own life. Foreman was a cold-blooded professional, ensuring there was no loose ends. Just like with McVitie, Frank's body was never found. Years later, Freddie Foreman reflected on these murders, describing them as business decisions, a chilling summation that reveals the brutal pragmatism of the Krays world. Foreman, who admitted to being involved in disposing of Mitchell's body, would recall the tensions and chaos surrounding the twins, increasing unpredictability and demands. This weren't a crime committed in the heat of the moment, but a carefully orchestrated decision intended to avoid any repercussions from Mitchell's escape. Albert Donahue, who'd been tasked with fetching Mitchell when the twins wanted him moved, later spoke about the harrowing situation of hiding a volatile Frank. The experience of keeping him isolated, unpredictable, and often agitated in a small flat was unsustainable, and it became clear to the Krays associates that Mitchell's fate was sealed from the beginning. Donahue would recount how Mitchell's sheer strength and temperament made him more of a liability than an asset, which gave many in the firm little choice but to turn a blind eye as the murder plans took place. The murder of Frank Mitchell marked a turning point in the Krays' reign. It weren't just another violent chapter, it was a public show of their ruthlessness and disregard for even their closest allies. In the months following Mitchell's disappearance, the Krays associates began to see the cost of loyalty to the twins, with many wondering if they too might become expandable. The brutal execution of someone who'd once trusted them highlighted the Krays' unravelling empire, where anyone who became inconvenient could be next. For the Krays, Mitchell's killing was a calculated risk. For their associates, it was a stark reminder that the twins' code of loyalty went only as far as it served their interests. The cycle of fear and violence that the Krays had perpetuated for so long would ultimately contribute to the paranoia and suspicion that weakened the firm, sowing distrust among their inner circle and setting the stage for their downfall. As detectives began to untangle the intricate web of connections in the Kray empire, Mitchell's murder and its key witnesses played a significant role in turning public sentiment. The fearsome legacy of the Krays was exposed to be not just one of power but of betrayal, where trust was ultimately a liability. Next time, we'll uncover one of the most scandalous chapters in the Krays story, their connection to Lord Boothby, a tale of political scandal and power that rocked British society and nearly exposed the underworld to public scrutiny. Don't miss it. If you enjoyed this episode, please comment with your thoughts on these infamous moments in the Kray history, and let us know which stories stand out most to you. And of course, don't forget to like, share and subscribe so you won't miss any future episodes of London's Dark Archives.